Hi everyone, it's Agnieszka from 5 Minute Language. Welcome to my channel. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already and give this video a like. I really appreciate it. So today's video is about the easiest language to learn, and I'm going to talk about this topic from my own point of view. There's actually lots of research on this topic. You can find lists of the most difficult and the easiest languages to learn based on research, based on the amount of time it takes to learn them. But I'm going to give you my personal perspective on this. You will find it useful, hopefully, and it will help you choose the language you're learning. Not to say that we shouldn't choose difficult languages to learn. I think it's an amazing challenge to learn a language that you actually find quite difficult. I personally am a Polish native speaker. I have tried learning Russian, which is supposed to be similar to Polish. It's supposed to be a kind of relatively easy language to learn for Polish speakers, but I actually struggled with it a lot. So sometimes when you choose an easy language, it can actually turn out to be quite difficult. And when you choose a difficult language, it comes to you a little bit more easily. It sounds really strange, but it can be true for some learners. So the first thing I'm going to say, when we talk about the easiest language to learn, I'm going to say it's all relative. And obviously that's what you were probably expecting me to say. So it might sound quite obvious, but it's relative because it does depend on a number of things, whether or not you find a language difficult. So it will depend on things like your native language, other languages that you can speak, other languages that you have tried learning, and the specific language that you're learning. And the combination of all these things will mean that you find a language easy or difficult. So I'm going to use the phrase relatively easy and relatively difficult a lot throughout this video. For example, if you're an Italian speaker, you might find it relatively easy to learn Spanish as opposed to learning German, because there's a lot of overlap in the vocabulary of the two languages, but also grammatically there's lots of similarities, and you will be able to understand things much more easily as well as pronounce it, because the pronunciation of the two languages is quite similar. You might find it easier to learn Spanish than to learn French, for example, because of the pronunciation aspect. If you're Danish, you can probably understand a lot of Swedish, and you will probably find it relatively easy to learn Swedish to fluency, as opposed to somebody who is English or German or Polish, for example. So there's a lot of different factors that you have to consider when deciding what language is easy to learn. As a native speaker of Polish, I found it quite easy to learn English, and I think it's the experience of many people who learn English as a foreign language. It is the most accessible language to learn for many people around the world. And that's probably one of the reasons why it's an international language that we use to communicate, even if we're not communicating with native speakers of English. It's an accessible language. It doesn't have the kind of grammatical complexities that other languages do. The kind of conjugation of verbs is very straightforward. You don't have to learn lots of different endings and lots of different forms. There are quite a lot of tenses in English, but they are relatively straightforward to learn. And you don't have things like having to memorize genders, noun genders, like in Spanish or German or Polish. So it is a relatively straightforward language to learn. The accessibility of the resources and native speakers and speakers of the language in general, not just native speakers, is great, which makes it, again, relatively easy to learn, as opposed to learning something like Korean, where the availability of resources, of finding speakers of the language, is much more limited. So apart from English, the languages that, I'm talking to English speakers at the moment because this video is in English, so you are an English speaker, and I'm talking about languages that are easy to learn for English speakers. And these two languages that I want to share with you are French and Spanish, actually the other way around, Spanish and French, because I think Spanish can be slightly easier to learn for English speakers than French. And I'm going to tell you why. So Spanish, basically the main advantage of Spanish is the vocabulary. There is a lot of overlap with English vocabulary, and those words that overlap are called cognates. So you can just Google Spanish-English cognates, and you will be able to find lists of thousands of words that overlap in the two languages. The same goes for French, and that's why French is the other language that I wanted to talk to you about. as a relatively easy language to learn because of the number of cognates that the two languages share. So French and Spanish both have that advantage. There are also grammatical similarities between Spanish and English and French and English. Things like tenses, the existence of kind of continuous and simple tenses in present, past, and future makes the languages quite similar to each other. So if you speak English, you will be able to understand those concepts fairly easily. I think there are maybe only one or two concepts that don't exist in English that many people struggle with, both in French and in Spanish. But overall, the grammar is quite similar. The sentence structure is similar. The way you construct different tenses and different conditionals is also similar. So the advantage of Spanish over French for an English speaker is the pronunciation. Pronunciation is more straightforward, and when you see a word, you sort of know how to pronounce it straight away. It's more phonetic than the pronunciation of French. So I would say Spanish probably wins. And then the thing that I mentioned already when it comes to English, both in French and in Spanish, the availability of resources is what makes those languages fairly easy to learn. It's because there are lots of things that you can access for free. There are lots of, all the major apps for learning languages have French and Spanish. There's lots of courses available, both free and paid, and also the kind of resources that we all like to access when we become a little bit more advanced, such as Netflix shows, YouTube videos, and all that kind of stuff. It's much more widespread than content in other languages. So that makes those languages more accessible and easier. So yeah, that's the bottom line. I would be really interested to find out what you think the easiest language to learn is. Let me know in the comments, and thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.